if I think about the Ethereum winning, it's a bit of like not a bit of everything. It's on the top of everything. I like really winning everywhere. A feeling that because the economy will be there, because it's programmable, because you can execute everything with security, and because it's so global and neutral, then you can win in all the aspects.
Hey guys, unfortunately, no regular roundup this week as both me and Santi are traveling. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, we have this episode of Bell Curve with Tomasz at the Ethereum Foundation. So I hope you enjoy, and remember to go check out the Bell Curve podcast by clicking the link in the show notes and tell them I sent you. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Scale, the next evolution in Layer 1 blockchains. Explore the gas-free ecosystem at scale.space/ecosystem and follow their journey on X at Scale Network. Thanks to Scale for making today's episode possible. Hey guys, Jason here. Just to let you know, we have Permissionless 4 coming up in June from the 24th to the 26th at Industry City in Brooklyn. This is a conference for the developers and builders where we'll be focusing on the DeFi renaissance, applications, token design, and much more. Click the link in the show notes to grab your ticket today and use code EMPIRE10 for 10% off.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another Bell Curve Weekly Roundup edition. You got Michael's 1 and 2, Vance, and we have a very special guest joining us today. Today we're joined by Tomasz Stańczak, if I got that last name pronunciation right, Tomasz. Thank you, Vance. One of the co-executive directors of the EF. Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, excited for this. Where are you right now?
In Italy. I'm in Italy, so I'm just after a nice espresso. So
Sure.
fresh and ready.
What's going on in Italy right now?
In Italy now. Well, I'm here just for a few days, and I'm running back to some other European countries, I guess. Not sure. Good weather. Oh well, I did a short trip on the worst day of the year. Probably it was just raining 7 hours straight, and then the next day when I was sitting in a hotel, I was just looking at the sunshine outside.
Beautiful. I mean, looks like you're going founder mode on the timeline. You're asking a lot of questions about who's the best person for this Ethereum initiative or that Ethereum initiative. It's great to see. It's amazing to see. What's the plan there? Just putting out the public Batman call or what?
I know I had serious conversations today with Dankrat, with Ansgar, with Tim and Alex and Shoei. So we've been discussing about the roles that we would like to fill in Ethereum Foundation to show that focus on product and delivery, on engineering excellence, and we started thinking how to give a bit of a signal to the community that we're looking for bringing the top executors to join us, and that we want to structure the entire organization to be focused on winning and delivering what we want to focus on.
Man, it's a great change. It's a great vibe. It's good to see.
Yeah, one comment we had a couple weeks ago was your Twitter comment on stepping in. I think Matt Hogan from Bitwise was asking who'd be good to talk to about all of this, and you said, "How can I help?" Reminiscent of the Suarez mayor of Miami comments, and exciting to see for the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, I have so many conversations. I feel like hundreds of conversations the last 2 months. Almost to the level where now I try to just like switch a bit to more of a focus mode and discussing the strategy and writing things down and making sure that everyone is having all the communication, that even like taking notes and then delivering the notes to everyone else. So we have context shared among all the team leads at the EF. It takes time, and sometimes I went for crazy amounts of meetings, but it's then when you start feeling what the common patterns of complaints, of asks, and it does repeat. Then there are some also interesting insights in every single conversations, and it helps a lot. So like, I'm really privileged position of being able to talk to all the fantastic people that accumulated over many years some of the feedback that they would like to deliver to Foundation and ask for improvement. So it's fun. I love it.
How did you get this job? Like, did you apply for it, or like, obviously there was kind of like the public, like, who was going to take this over, but maybe talking a little bit to the process of that would be interesting.
I think that like in September last year, it was one of the first times, and not the first time that I talked to Aya, and we were discussing the general, like sharing ideas about the leadership and how I've been building Nethermind and how we address the questions about the talent management and so on. So that time, absolutely, we didn't discuss any of like my role at Ethereum Foundation, but I was already exploring like what does it mean when Danny Ryan was leaving for sabbatical and potentially leaving. So I think they were looking for answers of how they can look for leaders. And then we started just like being like we were in touch for the next few months. Maybe like we met once or two times in Tokyo and somewhere else. And I was reaching out in some like discussion around some enterprise project. So I reached out to Ethereum Foundation leadership asking like, oh, this is what potentially would like to deliver with large financial institutions for Nethermind. And they said, oh, actually, we would talk to you. And then we started talking. And that was the discussion about the Ethereum Foundation co-executive director position. And there was a few other meetings with Vitalik and the rest of the management team. Yeah, that's the story. Nothing special. Really.
No, it makes sense.
Tomasz, I'm curious, how has the culture changed? Or like, where would you like to see the culture of the Ethereum Foundation go? And obviously you have much more of an inside look than certainly me, and I think Michael and Vance as well. But, from the outside, it was kind of, my sense of the OG culture of the EF is it's very research oriented and very idealistic and very concerned with building a decentralized ecosystem and protocol. And it feels like there's been like, hey, we like that, but we also want to push to do more BD oriented things and go out there and speak to institution and get the ETH ETF in people's hands and stuff like that. And, I'm curious, like, has it felt like a cultural change inside of the EF? Like how much of that is actually real behind closed doors? Like, talk to me about what it feels like on the ground, what the change has been like.
Yeah, sure. Maybe before I say that, in 2016-17, when I was joining Ethereum space, it felt like it was exciting on both sides. There was a space for builders and experimenters thinking that all this like building all the smart contracts and composition and just having fun. And then also you've seen a lot of announcements from the EA at the time, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, with all these big names saying we'll be building on Ethereum. So that excitement was there, and there was a feeling that, yeah, there's space for everyone, and it means that there'll be composition of our traditional finance and what people are experimenting with. So you're changing the world. And maybe recently you've heard a lot about Ethereum Foundation starts to distance itself from the places where you can maybe win by making money or where the big money comes in. But that was also part of genesis of why Ethereum was growing. So I think this was a major complaint. And then joining Foundation, understanding the internal structures, I think that it's not like people love DeFi and are very open to DeFi. Like I couldn't find a single person that would say, no, like DeFi is something wrong. As for traditional finance, sure, there's always like a bit of people being afraid that there will be a capture and transition of a system towards something that maybe doesn't deliver on the values that everyone is fighting for. But then you talk to the institutions and they say, look, actually what we care about is the privacy for our customers, is the censorship resistance, so we can deliver all our transactions and not be censored. So there's a fair market access. So it's fun enough, it's the institutions that are pushing for all those values of Ethereum. They say that's why we choose Ethereum. And then it means that also it's much more easy to start opening people within the EF to say, oh, let's keep talking to those builders. They actually want to participate in the product definition and in the governance systems. And you've seen that in the past also when Coinbase Base was more open to participate and build on Ethereum. And it's the same as all the L2s on Ethereum go to institutions. They want to do the BD effort, and now the same Ethereum Foundation is changing that direction. So you're asking about the culture. There was probably a bit not enough communication and openness to difficult questions, to conversations with big institutions, with other big research centers or big development centers within the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think that always comes from maybe like some fears that some bad memory from the past comes back again, that someone will put too much pressure and you will not know how to maintain neutral stance. And I think that nowadays I'm trying to make sure that we show strength by being very convinced that we know how to maintain those values and that we're not afraid to tell people, because we know that no pressure will really affect Ethereum, because Ethereum is already like sufficiently decentralized in the sense of how many institutions appear that are significant, that have big money to build, that have a lot of like thought leadership established. So that's the opening now, but built on the strength of those values and thinking that we have that lot of confidence.
I think the values, like sometimes it feels like the values of like something like a Solana is more like, like Bronze Age mindset kind of type, like Americana vibes. Like, but Ethereum, it's kind of more incredibly neutral, Switzerland style type identity. And I think, those values haven't gotten ETH to like, directly where it is today, but like they've culminated in the building of the system, which happened with DeFi summer, and like things just are on ETH today. It's like there's the most stable coins, the most DeFi, the most TVL, the most fees generated from DeFi. And so like they have culminated in that. And I guess it's like now you have all these pieces of, like people are bringing liquidity to ETH because like it just happens to be where all these things are today. And like there isn't any more rationale versus that. But like how do you kind of push things forward from like a network perspective, where like you're hiring for like a director of like product or someone to think about product? Like what does that mean for Ethereum in terms of like pushing the ecosystem forward as it is today?
Yeah, I think that when we have all of this, and it's unquestionable that we actually see DeFi being very strong on Ethereum, see the real world assets on Ethereum, stable coins like winning, and especially when you look at layer 1 plus L2s, that it's even more of an advantage. But now what I care a lot about is never to think that, we're winning now, so it's safe, but actually what's the momentum, where are we going, where the other ecosystems are heading? Will we be able to have all of this impact and distribution and the users onboarding and being continuously excited to the developers to build on Ethereum, to integrate? And then it's like product, UX, interop, all of this. And when we start seeing it a bit more broadly, I would say, UX is the perceived security of the network. Like it's like, people really care. What's the experience of the risk? Like how comfortable I am there when I hold lots of assets as a fund on Ethereum. UX is how many applications I see that I can use when I come to the network and open the wallet. And is it nice design, but also is it a lot of choice? And then on the interop, I think that's something that I started realizing just today, like in some conversations, like, look, everybody talks about the interop of Ethereum with L2, but maybe also we could talk about the interop of Ethereum and its L2s with the traditional finance, with fiat assets, right? Like, so not only you feel like it's a single financial system when you're using your wallet and moving assets between L1 and L2, but also when you off-ramp, on-ramp assets, and you feel that Ethereum is this like very natural on-ramp, off-ramp space wherever you are in the world. And it's because of this neutral aspect of being globally accepted as something that's not just localized to a single region. And I think it's real strength of Ethereum to be in the East, to be in the West, to be in the South, and so on.
This episode is brought to you by Scale, the next evolution in layer 1 blockchains. With a gas-free, invisible user experience, instant finality, and robust security, Scale allows for limitless scalability and has already saved its 50 million users over $11 billion in gas fees. Scale's high throughput, zero transaction costs, and powerful Web3 infrastructure make it the ideal platform for gaming, AI, and other high-throughput apps. To explore the gas-free ecosystem, visit scale.space/ecosystem and follow their journey on X at Scale Network. That's Scale spelt with a K. Thanks to Scale for making today's episode possible. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about Marinade, the platform connecting Solana holders with the best staking rates on Solana. Marinade unlocks a high-performance staking delegation platform that brings billions in liquidity and security to the Solana market, with solutions for both individual traders and global institutions from both DeFi and traditional finance. Use Marinade to earn rewards on your Solana treasuries and holdings. Optimize your Solana staking with Marinade's best in-market features, including user downside protection through protected staking rewards, and optimized delegation via Marinade's automated auction marketplace. To learn more about Marinade, visit marinade.finance or click the link in the show notes.
I've got a question for you guys. Maybe we can open it up. I would love to, Tomasz, maybe kick it off with your opinion here, and then Michael and Vance, get you guys to weigh in. There have been a couple of debates on Twitter in the last week, and one is about Ethereum and this idea of kind of, should it try to mimic the sort of cult of Bitcoin? And so actually a friend of Blockworks and the pod, Ryan Sean Adams from over at Bankless, he sort of took a little bit of time off Twitter and then came back with a big post called like the Blue Gospel, right? And it was basically, hey, the Bitcoiners have had an enormous amount of success basically just creating a massive cult around Bitcoin. And we have all these debates around Ethereum about building businesses and generating fees, and REV was another huge debate of the last week. But Bitcoin doesn't generate any fees. And look at how valuable it is. It's actually crushing everything else. And so there have been some, at the same time, Tomasz, it's felt like there's a push from you and Doncrad to let's scale the L1. Let's focus on bringing businesses and RWAs and creating kind of fundamentals. It seems like there's another corner of the community which is advocating, let's just evangelize ETH, the asset, and kind of run this guerrilla style marketing campaign that admittedly has been wildly successful for not only Bitcoin, but the Cardanos of the world as well. Not picking on Cardano, there's not a lot of fundamentals. It's very richly valued. So I'm just curious, where do you three fall in this debate? Should we be evangelizing ETH, the asset here? Should we be focusing on the fundamentals? Are they not mutually exclusive? Like, what do you think about this kind of push towards more of the, the cult of the blue coin?
I mean, my quick take is I think Ethereum is in this interesting space where it kind of lives within the continuum, somewhere in the middle between the continuum of like Bitcoin on one end, which is maybe 100% monetary premium. There's no tangible like REV that you could ascribe to a discounted cash flow value analysis of the value of Bitcoin. On the flip side, you've got, DeFi protocols that are, literally valued on token terminal or DeFi llama based off of their, the fees that they're generating and the value that they're passing back to tokens. Ethereum kind of lives somewhere in the middle. And I think that's one of the beauties of Ethereum, the asset, which is it kind of has a little bit of everything for everyone, where if you, over the last, 9 months with some of the changes to the blob fees and the network, it has gone inflationary again. It's more recently gone deflationary again. There's value that you could ascribe to analyzing, what the fee base will be and what the token burn will be. But you also should think of it as the most widely used collateral asset within DeFi. You should also think of it as, historically what people have paid for NFTs or what they're using, to pay for things on chain. And so it kind of combines a bunch of different valuation methodologies or like asset identification methodologies into one. And I don't want or ascribe to the perspective of we need to put it in a single box. I think it can be a lot of things to a lot of people. And it may not be the perfect DCF. It may not be the perfect monetary asset as a standalone, but the combination of the multiple different angles, I think, is the value of it.
I think I'm really happy that I see much more people being very optimistic that what Ethereum Foundation has to do is make sure that the protocol shows that resilience and the long-term growth, scaling, and we understand what we're doing, and we'll continue supporting protocol indefinitely. And then that they can build that confidence into understanding that, okay, so then there'll be a massive global economy that people will be building, the programmable money solutions, that will start onboarding stable coins, more of the real world assets. And over time, it will be massive. Like it can move 10, 100x of the size of economy that is executed on Ethereum. And that while we also ensure security, then everyone else thinks, oh, okay, so what happens if all of these assets flow to Ethereum? What happens if all of those transaction flows happen within the Ethereum ecosystem? And then they start building that confidence. Oh, wait a moment. And then this is really big. And then they start bringing probably a bit of this feeling of mimetic Bitcoin style. And maybe if I think about the Ethereum winning, it's a bit of like not a bit of everything. It's on the top of everything. Like really winning everywhere. A feeling that because the economy will be there, because it's programmable, because you can execute everything with security, and because it's so global and neutral, then you can win in all the aspects. Sure, it's a big dream, big expectations, especially now when many people claim like, oh, there is a crisis, you have to react fast. So sure, the foundation will be targeting this next 1-2 years to show that we can have perfect execution. But I'm very optimistic when I see everyone else thinking like, oh, this gives me the fuel to feel that it's all very powerful and it goes in the right direction.
It's crazy to hear just like, next couple years type deadline, or not like deadlines, but like schedules from the EF, and like, we're going to demonstrate, we're going to win. Like it's a very different change of tact. The only thing I would add to kind of the 3 points made are, I think like a lot of Ethereum, the original values of Ethereum, at least for me, were more about like futurism than like cyberpunk. And I think they're kind of close cousins of each other. But I think a lot of the futurism that's happening that we see outside of crypto is like, frankly, very expensive CapEx, infrastructure. So like big data centers, next gen energy. And I think a lot of those pair naturally with like the very deep capital markets of Ethereum. And so, we talk to energy projects that want to issue things like bonds on chain. The natural home is Ethereum because the capital markets are deep. And I think just like prioritizing the intersection of, Ethereum is like futuristic technology, combining with other groups of futurism folks and like pushing the boundaries on energy and RWAs and AI and data center CapEx. Like I think there's like a lot of optimism to be found at that intersection, which is also just like way, not more tangible, but just like it just has an impact. It's a lot different because you're bringing more people into the fold. And
it's like by far the fastest growing component of the economy. I mean, like even today, we're recording this on the 21st. You got the OpenAI acquisition of basically Johnny Ive for $6.5 billion. You've got
there was an Easter egg in this podcast for eagle-eyed listeners, actually.
Yeah,
there is. We did pre-announce that, I guess.
We did, yeah.
Yes, that is true. But I mean, look, there's no other place that's growing as rapidly as that is happening. The amount of CapEx spend, like we're talking to some of these startups that are, some of them are literally using venture dollars to buy GPUs. And other examples like CoreWeave are issuing convertible bonds at 19%, like SOFR plus 11, and it's just like crazy the amount of capital that's going into some of these areas of the economy. But when we talk to the decentralized components or the ones that are wanting to assemble capital to help go after these opportunities, they're all talking about Ethereum. And so like REV, I think is a interesting term for real economic value, and it's more of like a measure, I'd say, of GDP on an ecosystem. But it's hard to measure too because it does kind of imply like the fees that are being extracted versus like the economic value that's being transacted, and that I think is a hard one to amass. But TVL is kind of a wonky metric for that. But there is an element of like, where is everything that has real value, tangible value, going to exist in the future? And that's, at least from what we can see, forecasted for Ethereum.
Yeah, it's a bit of everything here, right? So we're talking about the massive investments in the technology of the future, and definitely Ethereum is a space there for decentralization of that. And look, we also talk about the DAG formats. So Vitalik is spending a lot of time with communities around the world. You mentioned Switzerland, actually the Switzerland style of Ethereum being a bit, and there was Switzerland just last week when we were discussing those questions about privacy in the future, governance of the future, how AI and governance collaborates, and how you decentralize access and make sure that you still have many of the cypherpunk values. So this exists on Ethereum, and I think the neutral aspect of Ethereum is also that you have a massive layer servicing people that really care about privacy and cannot be connected to some of the other layers of the economy, and that those can safely exist on the chain that like remains absolutely neutral with the global financial markets that are allocating big money and moving things. with understanding that there are obviously risks to acceleration, but they're like protocol almost like doesn't want to be too opinionated about what can be executed on protocol itself, as long as it, I think culturally it does encourage a lot of communities that ask questions about how decentralization protects communities, protects the us all humanity against the risks of accelerated AI. But as a question, is blockchain does the space for that safety and for additional opportunities on building something novel when we talk about AI? That's like one of the categories. So the verification of AI and so on, or blockchain is just becoming this source of slowing things down. I think it's the former.
I also, I want to get into the real-time proving announcement from Succinct this week. But, one thing that I don't know, Bitcoin may be a special snowflake here. I have no idea in the long run, but I don't know. I don't want us to learn the wrong lessons from the last 5 years or so. And I see a lot of people that are just pointing towards Cardano and XRP that have crazy valuations. Almost like, hey, they have crazy valuations. Why shouldn't we try to meme and cult our way into crazy valuations? And I have no idea. I guess the way that I feel about that is, why would we try to replicate what Cardano has done here? I think the opportunity for Ethereum is to do much more than that. I also think it's the better strategy in the fullness of time, right? I don't know if I think, by the way, to maybe get into the REV definition and all that, I think that's one metric that you can look at blockchains through. I think TVL is another metric. There's no one metric that holistically tells you this is how you should value a chain. It gives you a slice of one component that should probably go into the valuation of these chains, but it's definitely not the end all be all, right? And it depends what stage of growth the chain is at. And
on REV, I think there is some dimension of like, blockchains are meant to literally like last forever. Like your children's children should be able to like see your transaction and be like, oh, he like cooked with that one, or like he was using the chain. And so like logically, like a lot of the earnings should be very, very far in the future, like hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years. And so like, I think that's kind of the unique answer as to why a DCF is not the right way to value these things. REV is probably closer, but there's kind of like these negative externalities that you can get when you're trying to optimize for a metric like REV. I do think like just on the kind of like long-term strategy, I think it's like the cypherpunk ideals are kind of like the foundation. It's like sovereign individual. You can kind of get most of the way there, getting that into the base layer, not being too opinionated. And then there's kind of like the layer on top of that, which is like futurism. And like, what type of futurism? Is it like nihilism futurism, where it's like we're all going to gamble, hyper gamble, nihilism, that type of idea? Is it just kind of like, we can take these technologies and merge with other groups of futurists, and like that's like a very more optimistic vision? And I think the problem that most people have had with Ethereum historically, or maybe the past few years, is just like the vision of futurism was like NFTs and like DAOs, and those things are obviously very valuable, but it's not like world changing. It's not ambitious enough. And so I think there's going to be like a movement to rewire, like mostly brought in by external people that are now interfacing with blockchains, like what the vision of the future looks like per chain.
Well, and I actually, I don't know if like DAOs or like NFTs themselves are, as a concept over. I don't think anything is ever officially over. I think where we fell short, especially in 2021, when all this stuff was kind of hitting its crescendo, was there just wasn't anything that it was attached to that was tangible. And it was sort of the circular capital motion of like everything lives on, on chain and it's moving on chain, but we didn't connect it to the off-world economy. And like for the first time, I think in the last year or two, we've actually been able to start to connect things to the real world economy in ways that like literally started with T-bills. And, now we're talking about like financing AI data centers on chain, or like, next gen energy on chain. And like, that's where we're starting to, and I think finance and DeFi is sort of that first way of connecting. And eventually we're going to start to have enough on chain or enough that's connected between on chain and off chain, where you can actually start to build some of these primitives, and like maybe a DAO for, coordinating all of that capital actually makes sense. And maybe an NFT to represent, the deed for your house, as everybody used to talk about, like actually makes sense because you can take a loan against it as opposed to getting a mortgage. Like all those types of things, I think will, in the fullness of time, become real. But we're just now starting to build the inroads to the on-chain, off-chain.
And you can tell that that's where a lot of the energy comes from, because like you talk to people that work at these big private credit shops or that are tokenizing whatever asset, and they're like, this shit is incredible. Like this is the future. And you're like, we've had this for a long time. They're like, but this is the first time we've used it.
Right.
And that's like the big unlock where you're like, okay, this is going to work, but it's just going to like, you have to really have these ambitious scale projects. And I would say TradFi is meeting us more than halfway, because the ETF wave, which is turning into the tokenization wave, like it's just like we have standard file formats to read. It's like we can, take your assets, we can do things with them, we can loop them, we can create shares. It's like that is very futuristic, and I think a very like optimistic vision for what Ethereum could be. And it does have a lot to do with the cypherpunk ideals, but there's not like a direct line. It's all indirect, and I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, TradFi has been waiting for many years to be able to move like full speed and just be totally involved. They were blocked by regulations. I think the same way as many real use cases by crypto were just very well defined already in 2015, 16, 17, how this will look on Ethereum. And then suddenly people had to just do some kind of crazy limited solutions without being able to connect everything, just because they didn't know how to operate within the regulatory framework. So this is a massive unlock from last year, and hopefully it will all be done well. There's lots of promising signals. And if you can see equities on chain, if we can see this massive stable coins adoption, this is already happening. I mean, like the acceleration is huge, and we hear that from institutions that are excited about Ethereum. They're now looking at how to take advantage of this global system, because with the global Ethereum network, which is like very welcome in all the countries around the world, you can have solid on-ramp, off-ramp, solid connectivity to all the financial systems. And you have this borderless aspect of blockchain that was always massive advantage of it. You could escape local regulations and participate in global economy, and this is big. And then fee generation potential is huge. And then NFTs, they appeared and they disappeared, and then they came back with a much more force a few years ago, and then establishes the fabric for the future design of maybe like the ownership and some super future looking metaverse ownership. Like now we have all the Gen AI, and that'll be next generation of Gen AI. We see probably full feature movies generated soon. It means that you'll be able to generate also live for people. And then there'll be a question of what's the reality in digital space. Maybe there'll be one space of hallucination that everyone will share and think this is where I prove that I own something. And then suddenly you say, oh, actually there is so much space for innovation on NFTs. And again, this will happen on Ethereum, and people haven't even started. This will be like a new category probably in a year or two.
So one quick anecdote. We have a friend who works at a very large bank in New York who's been working out of our office here in San Francisco. And he sat in on a pitch yesterday where they're actually, it's a concept that's going after the data center and specifically GPU market, where they're actually taking GPUs, representing them in NFT form on chain. So they technically sell the GPUs to the company that then issues a token on chain that, according under UCC, is actually representative of the ownership of those GPUs, and then they're able to borrow against them. And there's a amortization schedule, but like the NFT for the first time actually represents like the ownership of a physical asset in the real world. And you're able to borrow against it. And if you default on your loan, like they can reclaim ownership. The GPU doesn't ever move, and it's still being utilized, but it's something where the NFT actually represents that ownership and can point access to whoever the owner is based off of the loan status, which is the first time that we've seen anything like that at scale. And we were showing this to our friend who works at this bank, and he's like, "Yep, I gotta quit."
It's over. We're gonna win. I just like having this guy in our office this week. We were like, we heard CoreWeave is doing like a bond auction, this like big public company in the US. So like, can we see that? He's like, I think you can. He sends it to us. We're like, can you tokenize this? He's like, I mean, not right now, but like in the future. So like, it's just like, I think especially like the funds that are, I don't know if like Ethereum aligned or whatever you want to call it. Like, I just think you're going to end up on ETH doing these things kind of no matter what, because like the capital markets are just so deep. But like it does take some creativity from the actual capitalists, the fund managers as well, to push the vision forward.
This episode is brought to you by Scale, the next evolution in layer 1 blockchains. With a gas-free, invisible user experience, instant finality, and robust security, Scale allows for limitless scalability and has already saved its 50 million users over $11 billion in gas fees. Scale's high throughput, zero transaction costs, and powerful Web3 infrastructure make it the ideal platform for gaming, AI, and other high throughput apps. To explore the gas-free ecosystem, visit scale.space/ecosystem and follow their journey on X at Scale Network. That's Scale spelt with a K. Thanks to Scale for making today's episode possible. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about Marinade, the platform connecting Solana holders with the best staking rates on Solana. Marinade unlocks a high-performance staking delegation platform that brings billions in liquidity and security to the Solana market. With solutions for both individual traders and global institutions from both DeFi and traditional finance, use Marinade to earn rewards on your Solana treasuries and holdings. Optimize your Solana staking with Marinade's best in-market features, including user downside protection through protected staking rewards, and optimized delegation via Marinade's automated auction marketplace. To learn more about Marinade, visit marinade.finance or click the link in the show notes.
It seems like Ethereum is really running away with the DeFi market and the RWA sort of tokenization market. And, Tomasz, I'd be curious to get your perspective on this because it seems like, and actually it seems like and this is why I think there's so much debate about REV in general, is just because I guess it depends on, obviously certain chains are set up to do better on certain metrics, right? And so whenever a metric gets created, the chain that, looks good based on that metric, champions it, and, the other chains push back. And
find your own KPIs.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in reality, I think there's a lot, we haven't actually defined what REV is, so I can circle back to that at the end. But I would be curious, Tomasz, if you think, and I'm curious, why do you guys think it's been so sticky with DeFi on Ethereum? And similarly, it kind of seems like Solana is running away with consumer in general. But I'm curious if you see these use cases being sticky to one chain or another, and why do you think it's DeFi that seems to be taking off on Ethereum versus maybe consumer over on Solana?
Yeah, sure. There's definitely aspect of the pre-existing liquidity and all the components of DeFi that are there that you can later compose and take advantage of larger finance, larger users to be there and creating liquidity space and fee generation. Now, yes, as you say, when you have consumers, when you have the gambling aspects, the meme coins, and so on, so definitely you've seen it much more on Solana in the last year or so. And it's not that we don't want to see it on Ethereum. We absolutely do want to see it in Ethereum. And Ethereum was going for that scaling roadmap of saying, let's see L2 scaling massively, that activity. And then towards the end of last year, we felt like, oh, wow, yeah, we're there. It's scaled, it's available. And I think we arrived maybe just a few months too late for some of those applications and projects to launch on the L2s when they were getting ready. But I think that now we are ready to take it back. And then as we progressing towards the integration of all the layers together, all the L2s, then you should see the network effect, and those applications should be very comfortable coming back to launch on L2s and say, yeah, we can run it at the same speed. But yeah, it will be challenged to look at, are there some UX on-ramp components? Are there already some users of this new wave that just stay on Solana and feel very comfortable there, and how you attract them to Ethereum space? So this will be for sure an effort, but also we see a lot of signals that many applications are ready to launch on L2s, are launching on L2s on Ethereum, and it's not like suddenly everything escaped. And there'll be many builders feeling like, okay, this was the innovation, how I can evolve on this, how I can experiment with it also on Ethereum. And many of the old builders or G from Ethereum are coming back and I say, oh, actually this is a fresh moment. This is the crisis, the battle. I want to come back and I have lots of ideas I want to launch. And what we received as an ask is to build this spaces, communities, super team-like structures where we support new builders, new founders on Ethereum to launch applications. So this has to happen, and it requires some effort, coordination between different institutions, L2s and L1, Ethereum Foundation, incubators, accelerators. We're welcoming them now a lot to Ethereum to collaborate with Ethereum Foundation on accelerating those pipelines to just say, hey, we are ready, and we were asleep for a while, and sorry for that. And let's build it. There is lots of excitement. We run the events where lots of new builders, lots of new fresh blood is coming to the ecosystem, and we will be building with hardware, with AI. And we very much welcome all the trading or gambling experiments. It was fun, and so many builders from Ethereum that now are super serious. We're starting with absolutely silly ideas years ago.
Man, that's I saw, I think Jeff Wilkie or whatever. I think he's an OG Ethereum whale. People were he's sending his ETH to Kraken, and then he sent it all out of Kraken into individual wallets and started bull posting and posting about the ETH roadmap. It's definitely we're getting the band back together. It's cool to see.
Yeah. Real quick, because I realized we haven't defined Rev, and then we can move on from this. And I actually want to get your change tax and start talking about real-time proving, which is a super cool announcement this week. But REV stands for real economic value. It's a subset of, initially, the first metric here is actually something called total economic value, and it describes the revenue streams of an L1 or an L2 blockchain. So inflation, transaction fees, and then basically fees like priority fees, tips, MEV, that type of thing. And the intuition is inflation is not real revenue, right? That's endogenous shifting value from non-stakers to stakers. So if you were to net that out, what is a measure of kind of an ARR top line demand and value capture metric? That's what real economic value is. That's kind of what people are willing to pay to use the chain. And this is a related metric to what people kind of call chain GDP, which might just be the total amount of revenue that apps are generating in aggregate on top of your chain. And so I do think some amount of nuance got lost in this on Twitter. Obviously, I think that the intention was never to say that any one metric defines the valuation of a chain. That would be very silly. Obviously,
you trying to make Rev happen?
Obviously, that's not the case.
Almost like there's a Blockworks dashboard for it or something.
There may be.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I've seen Tina Jen from Flashbots actually looking at it and saying in disbelief, because I was with Flashbots at the time when they were publishing a paper on REV for the first time. So I think it was 2021, 2022. So the team was defining those metrics at the time from MEV. I think REV for the first time when it was appearing was real extractable value, and then it evolved. And look. Those terms, people reinterpret them, and I think that the current conversation is about this real economic activity that is meaningful. It tries to show the app activity, everything that happens. It matters. So definitely, all the dashboards are needed, and I would love to see it on Ethereum.
Yeah. And I think that the definition has evolved a little bit from, I think there's maximum extractable value, which is a subset within that. And then the realized component of that is how much did people actually profit from whatever arbitrage activity or auctions that we're running on MEV. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate for sure. But I don't want to rehash it. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about real-time proving here. So this was something that got announced from Uma and the team at Succinct. So I'm reading from the tweet here, but this is something that we've talked about on the pod, that ZK is always happening next year, and it's been like that for the last 5 years. But it seems like we're actually getting real-time proving, and real-time being within 9 seconds on Ethereum, which is really, really strong. And the implications of this are quite large, right? There's been a huge amount of infrastructure and kind of generalized interop infrastructure built on top of L2s to account for the fact that, one, we have relatively long block times on Ethereum L1, and the time to finality is quite high. So if you're kind of bridging from one chain to another, you're kind of waiting for, it's like the lowest common denominator of how long the last the lesser of the two chains is to come to finality. And so if Ethereum can do that very quickly and prove very fast, then it makes interoperability across L2s much much-easier and much cheaper and more secure, actually, importantly as well. So I'm curious what you guys think. There was a little bit of Vitalik did. He basically highlighted the fine print that we're not 100% there yet. But curious what you guys think about this, and also what this means for just like how monumental of a step is this? What did I miss in terms of level setting on what an achievement this is? But then also, what does it mean for the L2 landscape, the infrastructure that supports interop, all that good stuff?
Well, I think also I saw something today from Tomasz talking about potentially changing the block time or having a smaller slot time. So curious to get your take on whether or not this applies to that real-time proving, or how you think they interrelate.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to that comment on Vitalik, because I think it's always good to have Vitalik saying that, look, actually, don't forget that there are some challenges, like we cannot overhype it, but even there, you've seen already Uma's response to Vitalik's comments, and we consistently have been talking about ZK, and it is coming sometime, and it consistently has been exceeding expectations, was coming faster. So Justin Drake has been always a great optimist on many of the ZK deliveries, and it seems to be that while we were sometimes feeling like, oh, this is like over-promising, it's that Justin was more right than everyone else, and it's heading in the right direction. And I think maybe Justin, with that so strong belief, he's accelerating lots of those events happening. So with the EVE proofs, we started creating this competition, and the dashboards show us that you can do the real-time proving, and now it's coming from succinct. We see it very promising on the ReZero side. So extremely exciting. It unlocks a lot of other discussions. We can talk more about native rollups. We can think about the base rollups on the ZK side. The rollups and interoperability get stronger. So Vitalik was asking about the decentralization. Could you run a prover if everything goes wrong? Could you run a prover yourself? Could you run a prover at home? How expensive it will be on the capex side? But it all accelerates, and it's good to plan Ethereum with this assumption of everything moves faster and faster. You have the Moore law progressing, and AI is getting smarter, and the machines and the hardware are getting cheaper. And I think we haven't done it for a while, so we stopped in place with the 30 million gas for a very long time, and now it's totally fair to start acting like we expect some things to happen, and we can always slow down otherwise, but we should design everything with a bit of excitement about the progress and the success in the space.
Yeah, and just to some of Vitalik's pushback here were, so to be clear, what Succinct successfully executed is within a certain period of time, they proved, I think it's 93% of the blocks for an average time of 10.3 seconds. So the idea here is to get it sub 12 seconds, which is an Ethereum slot. But I would assume some of those blocks that they didn't get to prove were perhaps larger. And those are obviously the more economically valuable blocks as well. So Vitalik's point is that this was an average case. We still need real-time worst case. It's still roughly 10x, too expensive to prove at home. So you need to rely on, an external sort of prover. And we also want to, 10x the gas limit here, as Tomasz, you and Domkrat have been banging the table on. So it seems like there's a little bit of pushback in terms of how long until this actually finds its way into production. But still, I mean, it's a massive achievement, I think. And having things feel like it's just around the corner, it just makes it more real, right? Like getting real timelines, real demonstrated progress. It's a fundamental, it's like a sea change in terms of interop on L2s. So
sure, on to 10x the layer. It's all aspect of the scaling L1 direction, right? So even if we say 10x the block size, but then we have to understand that it means that we also want to 10x the prover efficiency on the side, like the speed of provers. And we have to start looking at the latencies. That the scaling L1 means also that it's more as a hub for all the economic activity. They can be at the center of all of this interrupt space with all the L2s, which means that very often people will say the block time has to be has to be much shorter. The slot time has to be much shorter. And here Vitalik was again saying that, look, this might be unachievable in the current architecture. What we started doing at the EF Now More is like asking tougher questions, like which part of the Ethereum architecture could be replaced entirely. That first set the goals and then think like of what is absolutely top research and engineering that doesn't sacrifice that security and decentralization requirement, or understands exactly where it became replaced by some other decentralization aspects of like, so Ifuma says, oh, it's a decentralized prover market, so actually you address some of the concerns. And it can be in many other places, like there's some new subsystems that got decentralized. So coming back, it's all aspect of this L1 scaling, and we're looking at all of this together, and we start taking more of the like challenging questions. So not that choose the IP first and then think after we implement it, what does it mean for the product? And then when we deliver, we start measuring, kind of seems like much too late. Instead of set the goal and start thinking of, are those EIPs that we're choosing ambitious enough? If not, then we have to keep discarding them until we find something that is substantial enough that leads us on the engineering side to the desired goals. So I think there's a change of the attitude that we'll try. And that's why also I was asking, like, who should be the engineering leads? Who should be the excellent engineers up for the challenge in Ethereum Foundation? The ones that will actually be seen and like their names will be seen over and over again on Twitter, like, because people say those guys are delivering, those people are delivering the most exciting changes to Ethereum that you've seen. Like the same kind of excitement that you've seen when the merge was happening. We really need it in Ethereum. People to feel like when I go to Ethereum, I'm working on absolutely most challenging network upgrades that the entire world has ever seen, because that was the feeling of the merge. Everyone who participated felt like, oh wow, this is big. Like I'll be able to talk about it.
Man, that's very bullish that you guys are embracing debate. You know, nothing is sacred. I saw Solana is like I think it's Anza is like thinking about swapping out their consensus mechanism. Like I do feel as you kind of get to the, you know, hundreds of billions to then trillions of market cap, like you do have to reevaluate kind of all these premises, and it can often be pretty scary to do that. But like it's also cathartic once you can kind of just go back to a blank slate and say, like, what makes sense.
And we've done it a few times without stopping. So like if we've done it on the merge, we will be very, very hungry to show it that we have it, that the teams are like battle tested and they're ready to deliver the most complex changes.
Earlier in today's episode, I mentioned Ledger's latest products, the Stacks and Flex, and I wanted to take a few seconds to tell you more about them. These wallets feature the world's first secure touchscreens, which don't just simplify your digital transactions, but also keep them extremely safe. These wallets are virtually impenetrable to online attacks because they store your private key in a secure offline chip. You can manage more than 5,500 tokens and install up to 100 apps. Choose the most trusted name in hardware wallets and take control of your digital security today at ledger.com, or hit the link in the description of today's episode to check out their latest wallets. Hey everyone, Jason here. Earlier in today's episode, you heard me mention the weekly CIO memo from Bitwise. In an industry as hectic, fast, and complex as ours, it's incredibly hard to get an easy, no-nonsense stream of what's actually moving crypto. The memo comes from Matt Hogan, Bitwise's Chief Investment Officer. He's been on the show before, and he has this amazing ability to take the most complex topics and break them down with clarity. Trust me on this one, the Bitwise Weekly CIO memo is really worth the 5 minutes of your time. Check it out at bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo/empire, or just hit the link in the description of today's episode to get started. Carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto before investing.
Quick question just here is like, what would you say are the top North Star metrics, KPIs? What are you shooting for in terms of scaling the L1? Like, how do you think about, what would success look like in whatever period of time you expect it to take?
So you've seen Dankred talking about 3x each year, which means that it targets 100 million gas for this year.
Yep.
And we don't want it not to be a challenge, right? So like we said something that most of the client teams will say we are pretty comfortable with, but some client teams will say, oh, like there are some problems and we'll have to address those, but we want to deliver it. And then 3x next year means like it's 300 million gas, and then go 3x and 3x again, and then you have like 100x from now. And these may start invoking some questions about, oh, so what's the massive change here? What's the next generation of VM, next generation of consensus, maybe how it affects the entire ecosystem. So you have to start planning with the thing like, okay, it will be 100x, and there's no saying, no, it won't be. And then you go back and say, so how the statelessness should look, how the VM should look, what ZK VM can do for us, right. How much the proving has to accelerate. When you set those goals, and some people think that when they set those goals, they have to deliver themselves. But when you set the goals and you say it over and over again, then the entire ecosystem starts adjusting. And like suddenly there are some new crazy ideas, and the VCs are more likely to say, okay, let's do it. We found it because there is potential. Like if people say it's 100x, it means that I can fund these crazy ideas and there'll be space for them because people are open for it. So I think that's the atmosphere that I would like to building in Ethereum to happen in.
Tomasz, while we got you here, can you give us a quick preview of Fusaka? What is the latest in terms of timeline? Some of the big changes that we've got. PeerDAS, which has been long talked about. I also saw Donkrat has been calling for and banging the table on 1 second block times, the headline number, not for Fusaka at all, not even for Glamsterdam, which I think he wants down to 4 or 6 seconds. But I'm curious, what is the feasibility around the 1 second headline number? I actually saw Vitalik get in the replies and say, I'm not sure how I feel about this. So what do you think about that? And then could you give us just like the highlights of what we can expect in Fusaka?
Like I think from my perspective, that's 1 second block times is just to show direction, because definitely I wanted to start a debate that the slot times, block times, it's all important aspect of scaling L1, and that we're not only asking about the gas limit, but we also show that the entire network is changing towards better UX through the better performance. So the question is like, what can we do now? And that's where Donkrat starts talking about, okay, let's look at the 6-8 seconds, whatever it will be, and show that there is a direction. We start thinking of, again, what's the next generation of everything that's in Ethereum that would actually answer question. Can we make it 1 second? Can we make it 250 milliseconds? Does it introduce some other aspects of geographic sharding or questions about can you really maintain the same number of validators? And we want those questions to be mostly positive, that you maintain the same aspects of decentralization, but think of, well, that can you create this like few hundred milliseconds experience for the user? So like when the users feel that the things happen super fast, where exactly does it happen? Is it on the like Donkrat talks about this 3 levels, like the time to confirmation, pre-confirmation, the time to censorship resistance, and the time to finality. And when you start looking at any chains that are actually promising those good results on the latency, they also have those multiple levels. And Ethereum usually be very strong on the censorship side, censorship resistance side. And then on the time to finality, that's where significant improvements are needed. But then on pre-confirmation, even more, like how quickly your experience looks like that the transaction is executed. And again, like Donkrat will show you that, well, on L2s, you have the super fast pre-confirmations of something will happen, and then finality will happen on L1. But the experience is good. Like it's just hundreds of milliseconds, and the things here happen, and you can trade, and you can have this super fun like gaming experience as well. So all of that, I went to the level where I forgot where I started from.
No, that's a helpful overview. I actually wanted to get your guys' take on a story, because it scratches at this old fear around stable coins and who controls the network, as you have RWAs that move onto the chain, because this is like the most rumored IPO / potential acquisition of all time. But Circle is back in headlines here, and the reason being it's kind of an on again, off again attempt to go public. And there have also been acquisition rumors. And earlier this week, a couple of weeks ago, it was reported that Ripple may have made a bid for Circle, valuing it between 4 and 5 billion. Didn't get fully substantiated. Now there are talks that it seems like there's a bidding war in between Coinbase and Ripple, actually. And Coinbase has come to the table here, as was reported in, I think, the Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal this week. And it seems like Ripple may have raised their bid to about $11 billion, some combination of cash and XRP. And so the question is, one, how do we all think about this as a move from the perspective of Ripple? And then two, what would the implications be for Ethereum here if Ripple were to own USDC, which obviously has, it's still the main stable trading pair in basically every DEX. So yeah, I'm just curious about, like, from the Ripple perspective, do you think something like this makes sense? And then, would this be disruptive for Ethereum if this acquisition were to go through towards for Ripple?
Well, so I think first and foremost, when you go through an IPO process, you parallel process an acquisition process just to be able to go to the bank or be able to go to the board and say, hey, look, we've turned over every stone. Here's the best value. Our bankers think that the best value for us is to go public. Historically, that is the case. Now, we don't necessarily historically have the business model of Circle, which I'd say probably doesn't warrant a $4 to $5 billion valuation in the public markets, just based off of what the financials showed. At the same time, you've got extremely, I would say, token and cash-rich acquirers in our industry, which have the ability to potentially write a check for $11 billion, $11 billion worth of assets. And that's kind of the key point. I think generally, if Ripple was to buy Circle, that is a potential risk in that I don't think that they would kind of kill the golden goose and say, okay, all USDC is now running on Ripple rails. But they could start to favor that. And they could start to put Ripple on kind of the same level of the stablecoin issuance and rails. And maybe they're not as fast to do native integrations onto all the different Ethereum-based chains. Maybe they're not as fast to do new chains that pop up. And they kind of prioritize Ripple over others, which is an interesting kind of vector of what happens to this industry if Ripple kind of puts its thumb on the scale of directing flow and attention and assets in its direction, which is why it's worth potentially $11 billion to them, and a massive opportunity for them to really right size, especially with XRP trading at the FTV that it is. So I think this is a potential risk to Coinbase. I don't know if this is necessarily a potential risk to Ethereum as much, because if Ripple kind of takes USDC and moves it in their direction, I think that there are plenty of other competitive payment stablecoins that could step in and fill that void pretty easily, particularly Tether. All they'd have to do is kind of abide by whatever this Genius Act will include, and they will be already the most dominant stablecoin that exists in the world. I think they have maybe less of a focus on the US, but if Ripple is going to pull USDC in their direction, I think it leaves kind of a great opportunity for Tether to step in and kind of focus more on the US.
Yeah, I feel that maybe it's worth to think of what really does 11 billion bid represent. What is it applying for? So I guess this might be infrastructure components, the integrations, the know-how, all the partnerships, connections, but very likely any acquirer of the large stablecoin issuer actually will get closer to Ethereum. And even thinking about Ethereum being at the hub of all the economic activity, I would love all the other RWAs to start integrating with Ethereum economy more and more. And this is also a challenge for us. I have to deliver that interop perfectly. So this is the hope, but also expectation, as you said, that there'll be other stable coins launching. This becomes much more regulated market. There'll be some delays, so for sure you have advantage if you're now in this market where all the banks are integrating with the space, with blockchain, to be ahead and to be able to build those partnerships. But then I think it still places Ethereum in the center. It also creates we'll be hoping for some of the more decentralized representations of stablecoin to appear, include all the off-ramps to the local markets, maybe participation of local banks around the world, some consortia of banks to launch together stablecoins. So some of those ideas are appearing and seem very promising.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's I guess we'll just have to see. I would also say, Tomasz, just in addition to the, the advantages that Circle has, they also have a lot of licenses, and they're very well regulated in the US, which is a huge barrier to entry for new stablecoin entrants. So if you look at a lot of like the levels and the caps of the world, a lot of the reason why they're very clever designs, but they're also, lower cost. It'd be very difficult to replicate. Certainly what Tether has built today, and Circle for, we talked about their financials a couple of episodes ago, but they've got a moat for sure. And you don't see many just payment stable coins that are launching similar to either Circle or Tether today. So
and just going on in the background in terms of timing, Genius bill passed cloture in the Senate. It's going to be voted on. The amendment process is beginning, I think, today. The expectation is, depending on how these amendments go, it will pass. It was 66-32, and I think that it's actually extended in some of the other subsequent voting rounds. So expectation is that we're going to have a stablecoin bill pretty soon here.
Yeah, actually, we've had some really great news this week. The stablecoin, the Genius bill advanced. We also had a, albeit somewhat brief, new all-time high in Bitcoin. So happy all-time high day to those who celebrate. It feels a little bit different than it has in the past. It's a very quiet. This is the most quiet all-time high break for Bitcoin that I've ever.
What you want?
People are busy building.
Easy building, and the more time we have before things get really crazy, I think the better. Nothing leaves people less focused than like a serious bull market. So I think it's just like give us to the end of the year to execute and then run it. That's my plan, at least, or hope.
Yeah. All right, maybe as we wind down, Tomasz, could you leave us with what is one thing within the Ethereum ecosystem, anything that we've talked about so far, like upcoming changes, change in the energy or the vibe or the culture? Like, what is the one thing that you're most excited about within Ethereum here to leave us?
Yeah, I keep saying that what I'm super excited about, and maybe like is a bit too far in the future, and then I prefer not talk about it too much because we have to have this focus over the next 1 or 2 years. So for sure, there's massive excitement about the new energy, and that's like how much support I see from the ecosystem for me and Xiaowei to execute everything. So this is exciting because it feels again like being part of everyone, feeling that they want to build, they want to show that Ethereum wins. So this is short term, and I have a lot of expectation for what Ethereum does as a next big steps. Like we solve the crisis, and then seeing all the autonomous economy, like autonomous machines, agents, everything landing together in Ethereum and start integrating physical and digital world, like the simulations, hallucinations together, like sitting around the fireplaces and generating new realities and creating some kind of crazy economy. This is super futuristic. That's what I'm excited about. I feel like, we need to solve like some really big down to earth problems now with the network, so we can unlock some massive potential for moving to the next stage, like next chapter, next season of this amazing technology, curiosity, exploration.
All right. Well, Tomasz, has been a lot of fun, man. Thank you for hopping on. Definitely, it's been fun to watch your early days of your leadership at the EF, and just keep on chugging. And
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you a lot.
I'm even more optimistic. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you so much.
Nothing said on Empire is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed.